If anybody doubts whether we're actually live from the AHR Expo, just listen to that background noise.
Absolutely. Hey, look at this.
It's noon o'clock.
You know what that means? It's showtime.
It's time to start.
Here we are again, broadcasting live from the AHR Expo in Atlanta. It's the Jim and John show. You think the Saturday Night Live folks are going to be worried about us?
Not particularly.
Yeah, well, they ought to be. Thank you for joining us today. This is a recorded webinar. Did I say recorded? John, did I say recorded?
I think you did.
Now we're going to discuss refrigerants, including, what does it say here, John? Regulations, retrofits, and what else?
Design changes.
And not necessarily in that order. This will be a question and answer session, interview style. I'm going to try to stump my partner here with tough questions regarding this subject.
Good luck with that.
Hello, I'm Jim Jansen. That's, let's see here. Let's get a laser pointer here. I guess it's really kind of irrelevant because I'm Jim Jansen and this other guy's John.
I'm John.
Yeah. John is our longest running co-host for this little dog and pony show. John's a senior principal engineer for the Sporland division. What do I say? Published author, consultant, all around extra smart guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're a big deal around here. I'm just a plain old senior application engineer. That means I got gray hair and I've been with the company for a long time. Just to let you know, we're always here to assist you with your air conditioning and refrigeration flow control needs. If you wish to speak to a live human in our technical support team, you can call 636 area code 392-3906, or you can send an email to svdtechsupport@parker.com. Questions about legacy products, we can help you there. Now, if you call the general number, that's 636-239-1111, that can get you access to customer service should you have need of their help. But don't call them and ask to get to tech support because that's just going to tick them off.
Probably.
Yeah, they're not going to like that. They may hang up on you. I don't know. But of course, we're always here 24/7 at www. You don't have to say the www. Do you?
I don't think so.
Yeah, Sporland.com.
That's assumed.
Now, we're gonna kick this off right now. This is going to be one of those webinars where I probably do the least amount of talking, John.
That would be a first, wouldn't it?
It would be a first. This is a question and answer interview. Question number one, and this is almost my favorite question.
Almost.
Why are there so many refrigerants being introduced to the market, which seems like almost daily? Give me a break.
Well,
take a stab at that, John.
If you think back many years ago in our industry, you just had a very few refrigerants in use. And
12, 22,
12,
ammonia,
22, 502,
500 if you're a carrier dealer.
Yep, exactly. So it was discovered in the 1980s that a lot of the refrigerants we were using, which were chlorofluorocarbons, in other words, had chlorine in them, were hurting the ozone layer. And so there was an international treaty, 1987, called the Montreal Protocol.
We got a new engineer downstairs named Ozone. Is that the same thing?
A little different, actually.
Okay, all right. Yeah, he's a smart guy.
He is, very good. So the Montreal Protocol was basically an international treaty that among all member nations of the UN to eliminate ozone depleting substances. And the biggest offenders were the CFCs. So that's things like R12 and R502. And that was done in 1996. Then there was a longer timeline on HCFCs, which only had a very small portion of that ozone depletion potential of the CFC.
Okay.
So we stopped using R22 in new equipment as of 2010. And then since 2020, we can no longer import or produce any R22 in the U.S.
But we'll have R22 out there for a long time.
So through all that, there were many new refrigerants that were introduced to replace those refrigerants. This was all done via the Clean Air Act of 1990 in the U.S. And then more recently, we have the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol.
Kigali, Kentucky? Is it Kentucky, right?
I think it's in Kentucky, yeah.
Is it? Okay.
Or actually, maybe it's in Kigali is actually in Rwanda in Africa.
Oh, Oh,
So
wow.
that's where they held a meeting of the Montreal Protocol
Right.
there, and that's how HFCs were added to the Montreal Protocol.
We still good, Dennis? It looks like we lost some kind of link there for just a second.
So,
I think you continue to talk.
all right, very
Now,
good.
keep in mind, we only got an hour for this one. You can't
I
spend
know.
a whole hour on this
I
question.
I understand.
I mean, I still haven't heard why we got so many refrigerants.
Well, these refrigerants have been introduced to replace the ones that are being phased out. And so through the Kigali Amendment now, which has led, the original Montreal Protocol led to the Clean Air Act, the Section 6 of the Clean Air Act, which brought about the SNAP program, Significant New Alternatives program. That was originally set up to phase out ozone depleting substances.
Okay.
And to approve non-ozone depleting replacements. And that went along fairly well for a while. And in 2016, there was two SNAP rules that were released that actually did not phase out ozone depleting substances, but higher GWP substances. There was, as a result of that, there was a lawsuit.
Okay.
And that portion of SNAP, the rules 20 and 21, were actually struck down by a federal court.
Okay.
And that led us to the AIM Act, and the AIM Act, which we're going to talk about next, I think.
Maybe. Wow. So that's why we have so many refrigerants being introduced.
Right, because we're losing so many refrigerants, and there is a need to replace them.
Okay.
Some of them have, some of them, such as R22, actually have really great properties.
All right.
And so it's kind of tough to replace some of them.
Okay. Well, I'm confused then. What is this AIM Act that you mentioned? It has nothing to do with firearms, I guess.
It does not. It has nothing to do with aiming.
And how does it impact our industry? So what's the deal with that?
All right. So the AIM Act is known as the American Innovation and Manufacturing Act. That's the acronym for AIM. It was actually signed into law as part of an omnibus COVID relief bill. It was a whole 44 of the approximately 5,600 pages of that bill. So there's some light reading for you.
Light reading.
And it authorizes and obligates EPA to regulate HFCs. And it's going to bring about a phase down in production and consumption, not a phase out, a phase down.
Okay.
The regulated substances are actually listed in it. It's 18 different HFCs. You think, well, gee, it's only 18 HFCs, but it is the HFC substances that are the components of the blends that we use today. So essentially, it's most all of the HFCs that we have today. It is the same list as the Kigali Amendment.
The place in Kentucky.
Right. There are no HFOs on the list, so HFOs are not included in this. It is GWP weighted. So if you have higher GWP HFCs, you have lower GWP HFCs. One way to think about it is something that's lower GWP, like R32, will be favored over R125, which is higher GWP. The GWP of R125 is just about 5 times that of R32. And so, in other words, under this GWP weighting scheme, a refrigerant manufacturer can produce and or sell 5 tons of R32 for every 1 ton of R125.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Wow. I think you've answered about 14 questions here, John. I didn't know I opened up that can of worms.
I didn't even think we had that many.
Well, but okay. Well, that being the case, if I move on to question number 3, and now that AIM is law, does that mean the thing you mentioned earlier, SNAP, does that mean that that's irrelevant?
Irrelevant? No, not at all. Even though under the SNAP rules, most everything that has any ozone depletion potential has already been phased out.
Okay.
One of the things we said that SNAP does is approve new non-ODP replacement refrigerants. So new refrigerants are still approved for use, EPA approved for use in the US under SNAP.
All right.
That means even as AIM phases down the use of HFCs, our replacements still need to be approved under SNAP. Indeed.
Okay. All right. I'm not sure what to make of that, but here's something that does perplex me. Hope I don't fall out of this chair.
I hope you don't either.
Yeah, I haven't been drinking or anything. This is question number 4 for you, John. I don't think I've stumped you yet, but I might with this one.
Keep trying.
The state of California, left coast, did I say that? Tends to lead the way on things of this nature. What has the California Air Resources Board done as part of their extensive effort to curb climate change that might be above and beyond what the federal government is already pushing down to us?
Okay.
Is there anything like that?
Well, the state of California has definitely been active in this arena. One of the things they did, they had a research program going on through California Air Resources Board, really prior to much anything the federal government was doing. But one of the things they did was that when that court ruling I talked about earlier, that struck down SNAP 20 and 21.
Hey, who's that bald-headed guy that just walked behind us?
I don't know. Who was that?
That's Chocolate Chip. Yeah. I tell you what, just no respect whatsoever. Please continue.
When that lawsuit was filed, California decided to go ahead and implement basically the provisions of SNAP 20 and 21 into their own state law so that they wouldn't lose those GWP reductions.
I got
So that was kind of the first thing they did.
Okay.
And then as a part of the second part of their program, they went ahead and implemented their own GWP restrictions. So under California law,
Really?
they did.
Can they do that?
They can, and they did. There's no federal preemption on these things. On energy regulations, there's federal preemption, but not on refrigerant regulations.
All right.
So basically, if it's a AC or heat pump
Yeah.
of any size, the GWP limit is going to be 750 as of 2025. And we're going to see under AIM, it's actually pretty similar to that. For refrigeration systems, if it's over 50 pounds charged, the GWP limit is 150.
Yeah.
And that's actually been in place for over a year now.
Wow.
And there's also some limits on chillers based on leaving water temperature. And another interesting one that is more recent is California has placed GWP restrictions on service refrigerants.
Oh, man.
So as of 2025, you're not going to be able to even purchase a refrigerant that has a GWP over 2200 in California.
That's going to eliminate a lot of stuff.
It will.
Wow.
And, you'll still be able to buy some refrigeration refrigerants such as maybe R448A or R449A out as far as 2030. But after that, it gets even more restrictive.
Wow.
So,
wow, this is going to get interesting.
and there's some other state actions or other states have been taking similar actions, but nothing to the extent that California has.
Gotcha.
And I think with the AIM Act in place, some of those other states may not have a lot of incentive to keep going.
Okay. Well, hey, that really begs this question. Number 5. How are the various sectors of our industry going to achieve these global warming potential reductions?
Okay. Well, it's primarily going to be by the adoption of significantly lower GWP refrigerants, which is not necessarily the most straightforward thing to do. Most, not all, but most of the lower GWP refrigerants are flammable. So you have a 2L flammability classification, which is basically a very low, it takes a lot of energy to ignite a 2L. When you ignite it, it doesn't release much energy, and the flame travels very slowly, but they will sustain a flame on their own. And then you also have some A3 refrigerants, 3 flammability class, being basically pretty much a fuel gas. So they're a high energy refrigerant. That all has to be accounted for in safety standards. And so there are some new UL safety standards out there right now.
Okay.
There's on the refrigeration side, there's UL 60335-2-89. And on the air conditioning side, heat pumps, it's 2-40 under UL.
Wow.
And then also AHR publishes safety standards. We're here there's AHR conference going on in
Right.
conjunction with the show.
Right.
So there's AHR 15 for refrigeration systems in general, and then now there's an AHR 15.2 standard that applies to residential systems.
Gotcha. Well,
And beyond that,
there is beyond.
there is beyond that. There's actually a lot beyond that, but all I'm going to mention is those standards need to be either adopted into the model building codes by organizations like ICC and IAPMO, or there can be direct adoption by the states. As
Oh my
well,
gosh.
their state building codes, which a lot of them have done that. So
Okay. Well, you did mention the word residential
I did.
just a moment ago, which leads us to question number 6. And what about residential air conditioning and the associated GWP reductions? You know, what refrigerants are we going to use to replace R410A? And, it bit up to me. We kept R22, but not up to me.
It's not up to you, Jim. That's unfortunately. So there are 2 leaders out there. They're both A2L safety classified, so that's non-toxic, mildly flammable. You have a blend called R454B, which has R32 in it, and R1234YF, one of our newer HFO molecules.
And if I interrupt you for just a minute, John, I think we are working on products that work with 454B,
we
right?
are.
We
Indeed
probably
we
have
Absolutely.
samples available and
Yes, we do. Yep, we have sampled products for R454B, and we'll have happy to sample more. So it's a lot like R410A. Its GWP is 465, which is a very large reduction from R410A, which is around 2100. And it has a small amount of glide. You'll notice it is a 400 series refrigerant. It does have a small amount of glide, but only about 2.5 degrees glide. So
Okay.
not
bad.
not too hard to deal with. We are getting a lot of broad interest in the North American market on that refrigerant. But then there's another one that certainly generating some interest. That's just straight R32.
R32.
Its GWP is 675, so it does fall under that 700 proposed federal level.
All right.
It's actually slightly higher pressure than R410A. But still most R410A components are pressure rated to deal with it. It is a very good refrigerant from a capacity standpoint, a lot of capacity. It's a very universal choice in other parts of the world, particularly Asia. Japan and the rest of Asia has very much transitioned over to R32.
Okay.
And we do certainly have interest in it in North America as well. You actually can buy R32 appliances today.
Yeah.
In
Okay.
America.
Cool. Good. Well, how about question number 7? You would think this will impact the design of system architecture. And so what does this mean for various refrigeration applications like split systems and rack systems?
Need to advance.
No,
Okay.
no, I'm right. We're on this one.
Okay.
What do you,
Well, so
there we go. The guy answering the questions is telling the guy driving things what to do. We just finished answering this. Nope. Yep. This question. So I move on to this one and he tells me to move on again.
Sorry.
Boy.
Sorry.
See, look, I messed me up.
So
This,
for
how about this
refrigeration
one? We
applications.
good? We good? Good?
Yes, we're good.
See, you made the mistake of looking at this up here, right?
I know.
Yeah.
That's
See,
what-
I used to do that all the
that's what
time
I
when I was a rookie driving it.
I
I
apologize.
stumped you. I stumped you with something non-refrigerant. So go for it, John.
All right.
I'm sorry.
So in smaller applications, self-contained type applications, the predominant refrigerant that's going to be used probably going forward is propane, R290. So when you get into systems that you can deal with small charges.
Yeah.
The limit in the UL standards, UL safety standards for these smaller systems for propane or anything that's an A3 is 500 grams in an open case, half a kilogram, a little over a pound. And if it's a closed case, it's 300 grams.
Wow.
So a lot of those small systems are going that way. If you go up a little bit larger in size, but still stay under
Yeah,
200 pounds charged, you can get into some A2L refrigerants and potentially some A1s. So you would have some newer refrigerants. You could look at things like R454A
yeah.
and R454C.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's actually 3 different refrigerants in that R454 category.
You're killing me.
There's an R455A and an R457A that all fall into that.
That 300 gram thing that you mentioned, how long has that been in place now?
That's actually fairly new, but that was a part of that UL 2-89 standard that was published at the end of October of 2021.
And that just extends through like the likes of propane and
yes, those are for those are A3 charge limits.
Gotcha.
When I'm talking about these R454 blends and things like that, I'm talking about A2L refrigerants.
Okay.
The charge limits for them are significantly higher.
And that makes sense.
Yeah. So up into the neighborhood of 200 pounds with the right system architecture.
Right. Wasn't R290 limited to 150 grams at one point?
Yep. It was limited to 150 grams, which obviously is a very small charge, very, very small charge.
What?
And if we look at large systems like, rack systems and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, we see a lot of movement towards CO2 there.
Okay. Well, that makes CO2.
Yep, CO2.
Well, with all this phase out and phase down, will that necessitate refrigerant retrofits in order to keep existing systems running? And if so, what does that mean for somebody like a service contractor?
It is. Well, one thing I want to point out, we start to talk about retrofits. The first thing I want to point out is, as of right now, there is no path to retrofit a system that was designed for a non-flammable refrigerant to a flammable refrigerant.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Do not do that.
Okay. That makes sense.
Definitely do not do that to an A3, but even to an A2L, don't go there.
Okay.
The liability is simply too high. There are some very specific safety standard items that are, items that are in the safety standards, easy for me to say, that must be done to make even an A2L safe. So just upfront, don't retrofit to a flammable in a non-flammable system.
And it's probably been done.
Yeah, I'm sure it's been done. We know it's been done, and it's led to some bad things happening. So, we already talked about the HCFC phase out. So R22 availability for 3 years now, is the availability is only what was stockpiled or what can be reclaimed.
Okay.
So there's a reducing supply of R22 out there, and it's just going to get more and more and more expensive. And I think
so should I buy R22 and put it in my basement?
If that's what you want to do, Jim, go right ahead.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it, but
all right.
But so if we look at things like R404A, R507, and even some of the 407 blends, A, C, and F, they're going to keep increasing in price because we have to remember this AIM phase down is GWP weighted. So those higher GWP refrigerants are not going to be favored under. So right now, retrofits to lower GWP A1s are more important. So for something like an existing R22 or R404A or R507 system, retrofits to R448A or R449A, or maybe something like R407H.
Yes.
It's the 1,407 blend that comes in under 1,500 GWP.
Okay.
They make a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense to do right now.
What do these things mean with respect to components that might already be in a system?
So if you're converting from something like R404A to maybe R448A, the 448A is actually going to have lower mass flow requirements. In other words, it has more volumetric capacity. So you really need to check out your component sizing. The TEV could be oversized, and the proper thermostatic charge for R448A is actually lower pressure than R404A. You actually want to switch over to the V charge with 448A or 449A or several of those.
Oh, okay.
So, but if you're switching away from R22 to one of these newer ones, such as maybe 449A, most of the components are probably going to be fine, including the thermostatic charges.
All right.
And somebody sitting at this table wrote a white paper on just those types of retrofits.
I wasn't me. I might have read it 4 times, but I wasn't me.
You may have done some editing on it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was you.
So that's a Sporland white paper. It's form 5-492.
And a version of that was published in the ASHRAE Journal.
It was.
Yeah, look at that.
Published
That's that published author stuff.
Yes, it is.
How about we move on, John?
We can move on. I'll just note that you can find that white paper on the Sporland website.
Yes, indeed.
In our literature, you can find it there.
I'm going to stump you with this one. Anytime the federal government mandates an efficiency increase, like AWEF for walk-in coolers and freezers and DOE 2023 for residential and light commercial applications, and it takes place coincidentally with refrigerant retrofits, things get complicated.
They do.
You got any smart comments to make on this, John?
Well, it's a great point that things do get complicated. Each one of those things.
Oh, and by the way, what exactly is an AWEF? And is there a season on them?
I can spell AWEF for you if you need me to. Okay. AWEF is annual walk-in efficiency factor, and it's pretty much analogous to a SEER rating, if you will, for an AC unit. So we're pretty used to hearing SEER and knowing what SEER is, and that's actually was put in place starting in 2020 for walk-in coolers and freezers.
Wow.
So there's definitely things to be considered there. When you add the efficiency requirements in, things do get more complicated, as you pointed out. We have done, Sporland Division, we've done quite a bit of work on AWEF. We're certainly familiar with SEER and the things that you can do to help increase system efficiency. So those are all things we can help you out with. I think we actually have a publication or 2 on AWEF and helping to achieve those efficiencies that are necessary now for walk-in coolers and freezers. And so I think those are all things that we can help you out with.
Okay. All right. Well, you had mentioned something about a refrigerant known as CO2 a little earlier.
CO2
and maybe
carbon dioxide.
Yeah, and maybe that leads us to talk about that just a bit. I kind of thought it was dead for a while. Now I hear about new CO2 applications all the time. Just where are we with this situation? And just where are we planning to get all the needed CO2? I got, I did
CO2
yes
is a pretty high capacity refrigerant. It is an A1, so it's non-toxic, non-flammable. One of the primary challenges with CO2 is just the fact that it runs at very high pressures. So it does take some different piping practices, some different piping materials at times.
Yeah.
And CO2 can do what we call can operate under what we call transcritical conditions.
All right.
And so there you have very high pressures to deal with. And you also have
that could be a strength issue with components.
It could. And there are also issues with CO2 efficiency when you're running in transcritical mode. There are a lot of things you can do to improve that efficiency. And we definitely have some components that can help you out in doing things in that arena. And as far as where we get all the CO2 from,
we suck it out of the atmosphere, right, John?
Well, there might be a few installations that are starting to do that these days, but that's actually not where most of it comes from.
It's nothing. It doesn't come out of the backside of a cow.
No,
that'd be like methane.
That would probably be methane.
What's the R number for methane, John?
R50.
You knew that was coming.
Actually, most CO2 for industrial use is actually there's a plant that would burn natural gas to separate the hydrogen The hydrogen's for ammonia production. And then the carbon that comes off that is combined with oxygen to make CO2.
So we're creating more CO2 to use as a refrigerant when we're always worried about more CO2 getting in the atmosphere.
Indeed, we are.
Interesting
Interesting.
dichotomy there.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, let's go on, because I'm really into this hydrocarbon stuff, because it's kind of interesting to be using something that's somewhat flammable as a refrigerant. What about hydrocarbons and A2Ls in general? I know you mentioned a few things about that.
Yeah.
I just wondered how flammable is this stuff anyway? And here I'm being a jokester. Compared to gasoline, what are the ramifications of that?
All right. Well, one thing we have to remember is that most liquids, even gasoline, don't really burn very well as a liquid. So we need to look at the flammability of vapor, these things primarily. So even in a car, when you're burning gasoline, you're basically vaporizing it before you burn it.
Okay.
Yeah. So you hear these ratings. You hear things like A1, A2L,
Right.
B2L, which is the safety classification for ammonia. A or B means non-toxic or mildly toxic, basically. And A is non-toxic. The flammability ratings go 1, 2L, 2, then 3.
Okay.
A 1 flammability rating will not sustain a flame. It might burn if you blow it through a flame, but it will not sustain a flame.
All right.
A 2L will sustain a flame, but like we said before, it's very low energy burn, low speed burn. 2 is a little bit higher yet. And 3 basically is a fuel gas, so something like propane. So you could actually, run a combustion engine on it.
Like gasoline.
Like gasoline.
I knew it.
Yep.
I knew it. Okay. Now let's say somebody wanted to learn more about those ratings that you've mentioned. Where would they go for that?
Mm-hmm. Well, you can read some of our literature, but the authority on all the ratings and everything would be AHR Standard 34.
Okay, good to know.
That's where it's all specified.
Well, I'm going to say that there's got to be a need for continued contractor and service technician training on both A2L and CO2 applications.
Very much so.
What do you think about that? Is there a need for more training?
There's very much a need for more and better training. And, there's when you have CO2s, dealing with CO2 in a system is very different from dealing with our other refrigerants that we've dealt with.
Yeah.
And even though a lot of the A2Ls, they behave in the system very much like our current refrigerants, there's definitely some additional safety considerations to be taken into account with it. So we need training for both A2Ls and CO2 applications. Our own webinars.
Wow.
Do some of that.
Oh, like what we're doing right now.
Exactly.
How about I'll just
and as specialist classes, which I think aren't you in charge of those specialist classes?
Yeah, those are pretty here to mention those specialist classes, John.
You weren't actually supposed to do that until we were off the air, Jim.
Oh, well then give it back. Well then
no, that's okay. I mean, since it's already done,
our Sporland specialist classes, believe it or not, we're going to be putting together a schedule for those starting, if I'm allowed and get the leeway, maybe this coming fall. For those of you who are interested in that sort of thing, we're going to recommence some of that.
I might even help you out with those from time to time.
Good.
If you'll allow me to.
Good. Now, here we go. Now, it leads us to the final question. Our final question.
It's number 13.
Number 13.
It could be an unlucky question for me.
Hopefully, and we kind of mentioned this a little bit when you touched on some of the alternative refrigerants. Hopefully, Sporland has some flow and contaminant control products intended for use with these new refrigerants. Can you enlighten us on that?
I believe I can. So basically, pretty much our full line of products is applicable to just about any A1 or A2L refrigerant that you could think of. We also have a good broad range of products for A3 refrigerants like propane, like R290.
Oh, wow.
And virtually our entire product line is fully compliant under those UL safety standards we've already talked about, UL 60335-2-40 for AC and heat pump applications, and under UL 60335-2-89 for refrigeration applications.
Now, I know there's been situations where folks have taken liberties with things like propane because thermodynamically it's so similar to R22.
It is very.
I mean, I know of instances where customers have used our old level master control, which is a thermostatic expansion valve with an electric heater stuffed up the sensing bulb, and they've used that to control liquid levels in propane tanks.
Mhm.
We never sanctioned that, but I know it's
No.
happened.
So
Yeah.
not a great idea.
No.
We do not recommend that. And I don't want to get off this question before I also mention.
Oh, no, absolutely. I'm
that
just
we-
trying to
you know,
throw you off a little bit.
We do have a line of CO2 products. That's an ever expanding line.
Oh,
So
wow.
we have.
Is that a joke? You know, expanding, you know, when it's leaks?
You know, yes, it is.
That was an
Yes, it is.
expansion
That's right.
joke,
That was an
wasn't it?
expansion joke. You're right.
Yeah.
It was. Yeah. So we have gas cooler and flash gas bypass valves for
Okay.
transcritical CO2.
Okay.
We have a broad range of electronic expansion valves that are applicable to
You mean,
up to 90 bar.
you mean
applications.
electrically actuated, electronically controlled step motor valves?
I do mean
That's
that.
what you meant.
I do mean that.
Yeah, I
Yes.
thought that's what you meant.
Yes. So we have, we definitely have those valves available right now. And like I said, we're continuing to expand our CO2 line.
Well, I gotta tell you, John, I just didn't stump you on anything here. I don't know what to say, but
But you
Yeah.
tried.
I tried. But I tell you what, if you're out there and you're feeling perplexed about the use of any of our products, you can always call our tech support folks at 636-392-3906.
Or
Or you can email svdtechsupport@parker.com.
indeed.
You can even go to sporland.com and get all kinds of information, technical literature that's free,
Right.
virtual engineering software program.
Access our,
It's how much does it cost, John?
that would be $0.
It's free.
It's free.
You know, we've even given you a link to it right here. It's there. And I got to tell you, we're here to help you. We've got a team of humans that answered the phone and will actually talk with you. That's true.
Yep.
And I got to say, you know, a big thanks to
A team of humans that have a lot of experience in our industry.
that's
as well.
true. I mean, they've ranged the gamut of product managers to field sales to
That's right.
design engineer.
I don't know how many collective years of experience we have there, but it's a bunch.
It's more than I've been around. That is for sure. It's impressive. It really, truly is. And we have a technical team here that's helped us put this on, from Dennis and Jennifer and Phyllis and support back at headquarters. It's just, we couldn't do it without them. It is truly a team effort. And we thank you for joining us today. And
Thanks, everyone.